Hi everyone, welcome to night 31 of the Orphan's Tales Live quarantine reading series. The nights, they just keep going on. It's nice to see everyone. Since my lipstick has become a topic of conversation, I thought I'd dig out some old ones. So this is Nick's Snow White. Since we keep talking about it, thought I'd change it up. Yeah, at least I know which kind it is now. It's not just some Korean company that I can't name. Yeah, so tomorrow's my birthday, which is weird because I can't go anywhere or do anything or have a birthday in any realistic way, but it's happening. I'm getting older, as we all do. I don't know what else to say about that. Invisible party hat. But it's happening. I'll still be here tomorrow night for you guys. I'm also doing a virtual panel tomorrow at r/fantasy on Reddit, so you can find me occasionally answering questions about fantasy, presumably, tomorrow. So let's do our intro business and get underway here. This, for legal reasons, as always, is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. It is a play, a one-woman show. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can follow me on Twitter at CatValenti. You can support my Patreon at CatValenti as well. We are so close to the next Patreon goal, actually, like literally $70 from it. So if people sign up for my Patreon soon, I will start adding reviews of things I'm watching and reading and playing to the monthly reward package. You can catch up with the archive on my YouTube channel at CatValenti Live. You can ask questions after the stream, though it's very awkward when I sit here and wait for people to ask any questions, so it's best if you think of your questions while I'm reading. There's a tip jar on my Instagram profile as well as on my website at catherinemvalenti.com and my YouTube profile. These are free. You don't have to tip me at all. But if you are so moved, everything sucks for freelancers, and it is deeply, deeply appreciated. And I will thank you by name on the next stream. And to that end, thank you, Mandy, very, very, very much for your tip last night. It means so much. You can't even imagine. Plus, it's my birthday. Yeah. So all of those things are true. Let's get moving. I don't really remember what's coming next. I kind of faked it on Twitter when I was describing what happens tonight. I don't really remember. I know there's gold involved at some point. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you. So let's find out together. The tale of Saint Sigrid continued. Tomomo licked her lips. The fox reflection flicked its pink tongue over its muzzle. And that was how the Maidenhead was born. I named her for a thing I had long lost and sailed her true. Who would have thought a fox could grow sea legs? As soon as I had mastered her, I glided into the nearest port and took on sailors. At first, it was not that I asked for women or for monsters to serve. But men would not sail under a female captain, and women without our unusual histories were clamped into their houses like fireflies in a glass jar, and had understandably never learned any seacraft. Thus the Maidenhead, with all her strangeness, became even stranger and more wonderful. We are happy, we are free. You can be too. Sigrid nodded, her eyes lit with joy like beacons on high hills. She had never imagined her life would be filled with anything but the measuring of cinnamon dust and the keeping of her father's books. At that moment, her heart belonged to black-haired Tomomo, and there was nothing she would not have done if her captain had asked it. Being the captain she was, Tomomo knew this. She knew the light in Sigrid's eyes. She knew the eagerness of her posture. Many a girl before her had been enchanted thus, and not for the first time Tomomo thought that the magic of the hunt was not limited to the chasing of mice across a rain-wet field. Since you know nothing of ships yet, barge daughter, You will have to make yourself useful in other ways until you have learned. Go below. Find a satyr with green rings on her fingers. She will introduce you to our passengers, and you will see to their needs for the night." "Yes, Tommy." Sigrid smiled, a smile which had never before touched her face, the deepest smile which comes from the belly and gleams with its own flickering light. She turned and instinctively ran toward the door, which led into the innards of the scarlet ship, letting the door bang close behind her with a merry clang. In the garden. "I must go," the boy whispered, his hands already illuminated by the blue-gold light weaving its way through the sky as the night died away from them. The girl said nothing. She stared at her hands, as though she might read there some arcane method of freezing the sun in its ascent. "Will you be here when I return?" The boy was sure she would not be, whatever she might answer. She had slipped from him somehow, like a veil sweeping over his hands. When she had sat in his windowsill and told him of the death of the wicked king and the flight of the bird maiden seeking her cave, he had been able to touch her, to rest his head on her lap, to feel her warmth like a sparrow's wing in the sun. Now she seemed thin, transparent, and he feared that if he reached out his hand to her, it would pass through her skin as though through a waterfall. All he could think was that he would steal her any feast, any cloak of feathers or fur, any flask of wine, or even the jewels from Dinarzade's fingers, if only she would smile at him again. The way she had done that night, like the sun breaking over the first sea of the world. He frowned, picking at a clump of dirt with his civilized hands. "Meet me on the cypress path, where the stones are painted red. I will be there, I promise." And she did smile, soft and wide as a river trickling through a secret wood. He had not set down his second foot past the arching gate when Dinarzade's voice cut cleanly through him like a hot knife in his stomach. "Why do you insist on hurting me this way?" Her tone was petulant, sorrowing, but he knew the danger in it. "Sister," the boy began, "she's not what you think. I do not care what she is. She's not broken the rules of her house. She does not have a house to disobey. It is you who have defied me and the Sultan, who have kept the wives in a constant panic, like birds chasing after seed." Of course they had done no such thing. The harem was massive, so huge that the comings and goings of the many children were largely unnoticed. How could he be so special as to be missed by anyone save Dinarzade, who hated him so? The wives were desultory and sage, lounging in their halls like lionesses, occasionally swatting an errant cub. The army of tutors and guards and older sisters on the brink of marriage kept the brood in check, and it must be they who marked the boy's nightly absence. "What are you doing out there with her? You must know you are of an age where it is more than unseemly to be alone with an unmarried girl all night. Why can you not behave as you ought to, as a noble son ought to? How can it be worth all of this, just to sit with another child under the stars?" The boy saw his chance to make her understand. But when he tried to tell the girl's story and make her see how his heart strained toward the garden like a horse who senses home is near, it became jumbled in his mouth. No matter how he tried, he could not make it beautiful. He could not tell the same tale the girl unspooled from her eyes like strange black thread. "Dinarzade, let me tell you a story. Once there was a girl that no one loved, and she was called Snow. She lived in a town by the sea. And one day another woman, who I think was very fat, made friends with her by giving her an orange because both of them worked mending nets, and Snow came from the south where there were lots of oranges. Yes, I think that's right. The woman who was named Sigrid, that's important, told Snow a story about how 3 men with the heads of dogs took her away to a holy city. And then the dogmen told her a story about a terrible lady called the Black Papas, who could drive men mad just by kissing them, and the Papas kissed the dog-headed men and made them eat their brother. Have you gone mad, child? Has she cast some spell over you and softened your brain like an apple in the rain? I will hear no more of this." The boy protested, but Dinarzade would not listen. She seized him by the hair and dragged him across the courtyard under the sunshine of the new day, clean and bright as washed linen. He did not cry. At least he told himself he was not crying, though tears streamed silently down his cheeks. His sister's fingers were very thin and curled like the claws of a starving hawk. She hauled him behind her and into the stables, which stunk of horse sweat and dung, deposited him at the feet of an old man with greasy hair and enormous hands. All the boy could see of him were the huge hands, knuckled like the roots of an elm, laced together at the level of his eyes into one massive fist. Treat him no better than one of the mute slaves. If he escapes in the night, you will both be whipped, announced Dinazad curtly. She turned on one flawless heel and left the stable in a flurry of violet silk and black braids. The boy stood and brushed himself clean of the bits of hay that stuck to the floor and now his shirt. He was careful to look as contrite as he could, though of course he was already planning to slip out as soon as the old man was in his cups that evening. You could see the man's face now, which was lumpish and ugly, but not very frightening, more of the gnome than the ogre about him. That one's a she-dragon, and no doubt about it, the blacksmith grunted, cracking his huge knuckles with a sound like the breaking of stone pots. Firstborns are always trouble. Ask me, they should expose the first brats out of the Sultan's women just to be safe. If not for what's between her legs, she'd have been Sultan herself. No doubt that's why you trouble her so. But I'm not to be Sultan, the boy protested. There must be dozens of sons ahead of me. If I were the heir, they'd have told me by now. I certainly wouldn't be allowed to run around the garden or put to work in the stables. Look who knows so much, the old man chortled. The servants always know 10 times what the master guesses. Mark me, boy. You shoe the horse today, you'll ride tomorrow. The boy stared, nonplussed. He might have explained further that it was perfectly impossible for him to be anything but a minor courtier. The old man had begun to pile equipment into his arms, a curry comb, hammers of varying sizes, horseshoes, new nails, hooked tools he could not possibly name. Start with the black one on the end, eh? He's not too out of sorts in the morning. Some of the others like their beauty rest. The boy began to follow obediently, struggling to contain the tools in his small arms. But the blacksmith turned back and gazed through his cloudy eyes at the boy. When the sun's down, you can find your way out to the garden through the sorrel stall. There's a loose board and a little crawling passage. If you just manage to come back before dawn, she might not catch you. Take the girl some of my lunch. I don't eat much these days. She's a growing thing. The boy, stunned, nodded and ducked into the great black gelding stall, dropping several nails. He found to his surprise that he liked working with the horses. Most were patient as parishioners, lifting their hooves in a bored manner and nosing his chest for apples. He liked their smell, their big barrel ribs, their sloping heads, the softness of their throats. He liked their blustering noises and their quiet company. He felt truly like one of the witch Knife's tribe, tending his horses on the steps, preparing for a raid on an offending village. That tale seemed so long past now, but he immersed himself in it again, passed the hours in a merry haze. When the sun's rays had grown long and red as ruby tongues, he bundled up the food the blacksmith had left and started off through the door at the far end of the black-eyed sorrel stall. He felt a little foolish. Of course all the servants would know about the girl. What scandal passed under the many roofs of the palace that some servant did not know it and tell it to another? They might even feel badly for her and wish to take her in as their own daughter, raise her to bake bread and sew gowns, but could not for fear of the Sultan or the girl's parents, whichever of the diamond-strewn nobles they might be. All the same, he had begun to think of her as his secret, his own friend who belonged to no one else. He was almost sorry that she had friends among the cooks and blacksmiths. Cursing at such ungenerous thoughts, he searched out the cypress path where the thick green trees pointed skyward like minarets, reaching up to the first twinkling stars. The path was a complicated mosaic commissioned when he was no more than a baby. The pebbles were arranged in every color imaginable, illustrating a scene from one of the Sultan's great victories. He found the place where it was read for several steps together, the blood of an unfortunate barbarian, and saw that the girl had already arrived, leaning on a cypress as though she had waited for hours. I meant to bring you better, but my sister gave me to a blacksmith and I could not get to the kitchens. He held out the horsekeeper's thick crust of bread and yellow cheese and a fat peach. You don't have to bring me anything at all, you know. You don't have to supper for your song. She laughed at her own awkward joke, a high, startled sound like a spooked horse. The boys shrugged and set out their small supper on a square of linen in the midst of the scarlet pebbles. Of course, you might be high above me in rank, in which case I'd have to serve you. It would be my duty. I've no idea which of the men at court is your father. No one will admit to it. They talk of you as if you sprang into being out of the air like a djinn. You might even be my sister. The Sultan has many wives, after all. The girl laughed. It was a hard laugh, like the edge of a plate rolling over a stone floor. I am not your sister. The boy was a little abashed. I just like to bring you things, that's all. You like to hear my stories, and supper is their price. A noble boy cannot think of anything but cost. The boy started as though she'd struck him. Are you so angry that you cut me because your eyes are dark and mine are not, because I sleep in a house and you in a bower? Her eyes softened immediately, chagrined, and the dark shadows of her lids seemed to glow silver and black like the shapes of fish under water. She put her arms around his slim neck and for the first time embraced the boy. His breath caught and they stood awkwardly for a moment in the sea of red pebbles. I'm not angry. I'm not. Let me tell you what Sigrid found below the decks of the pirate ship. The tale of Saint Sigrid continued. Sigrid ducked and stepped gingerly onto the first stair leading to the innards of the Maidenhead. The interior was dark as a belly, dusty, and filled with strange noises, the knocking and creaking of a ship which Sigrid had not yet come to know as her own heartbeat. Suddenly a face appeared out of the dark swirl of dust motes, wide and open, a huge flaring nose, and great green eyes the color of a deep thatched forest. All around the grinning face were tight curls of deep brown hair, almost as tightly curled as the fleece of a sheep or the fur of a wild dog. The shaggy mane fell long past the chin, and Sigrid peered closer to see that the body attached to the face floating before her, attached to the face floating before her like a lantern. "Hello," it cried, and pulled Sigrid down into the ship by her forearm. She saw that the face belonged to the woman she had been sent to find. The curly hair bunched and knotted all the way to her waist, where she ceased to be a woman and became a strange, goat-like creature. Her haunches were thickly furred and brown and red, tapering to delicate hooves that had clearly been polished to their current bronze shine. She kicked them against the floorboards for good measure. "Satyr, you cops, to be specific, but then that won't mean a thing to you. Welcome, little one. You've nothing to fear now. Ashkel's got you clamped to her side and Tommy's at the wheel. You're safe as a vault. Now, you must make yourself useful, earn your board. At the moment, you're useless at anything the least bit nautical, so you and I are going to play nursemaid to our pig-headed passengers." Sigrid went along amiably, admiring Ashkel's hooves. Indeed, they were shiny as mirrors, copper-colored, and clearly strong as a mule's kick. "I admit I shine 'em up every morning," Ashkel said with a laugh. "But at sea you tend to cling to these little vanities. Besides, I can still kick a hole in solid silver with the blessed things. Now, the thing you must remember about passengers, paying or otherwise, is that they think they own the ship. They fret about this or that and snipe at us about the rigging or the sail material or the type of wood in the mast. Best to humor them if they're paying, best to show them the plank if they aren't." The shaggy woman stopped and turned quickly to her charge. "Not that we have a plank, you understand. We just keep a good solid board below and tell folks it's a plank to scare them into giving us some peace. If we wanted to kill them, we'd be proper about it and put a blade in their guts like any civilized crew." Ashkel led Sigrid through an astonishing labyrinth of rooms and stairs, so intricate that Sigrid could hardly believe they could still be on the Maidenhead. Finally they arrived at a heavy wooden door from which issued the unmistakable sounds of a hearty dinner in progress. "Part of the fun of it, you know," Ashkel explained. "The maid's a bit bigger below decks than above. I don't ask questions about that. I'm not a shipwright. It's none of mine. Now, these are the ones directing our prow for the season." Oh, I forgot how to pronounce my own word. Armaspians. They're a bit frightening to look at, and Lord knows I told Tommy it's bad luck to have a man aboard, but they pay in gold and they keep to themselves, and that's the best you can hope for anyone. Now take this beer and mind their needs, and I'll see to you in the evening. You'll bunk with me in the stern." Ashkel disappeared as suddenly as she had arrived. Sigrid was left face to face with the thick door, a clay pitcher of frothing black beer in her hand. She did not quite fancy being a serving wench to whatever monsters lay on the other side, but she hoped it would only be for the night, that in the morning Tommy would assign her to sew sails or some other thing which befitted a sailor. She slipped into the room and stood dumbly at the threshold, staring at the inhabitants. At her entrance, 6 or so of them had scurried behind a 7th, clearly their leader. He was enormous as a bull elephant, shoulders and chest straining with muscle, and black. Not the ruddy brown of Sigurd's own people, but true black, the color of midnight and lightless rooms, as though he had been cut out of a block of onyx. His hair was braided in complicated patterns and threaded with gold, falling down his back like a woman's. His eye cut into her, no less black than his body, and he only had one true eye. The other was an eye fashioned out of gold and set into his skull like a diamond into a ring. It was a perfect likeness. One almost expected it to blink. She could see that his companions also had but one eye each, though their artificial eyes were not of gold, but of silver and bronze and copper and crystal. Sigrid felt reasonably certain of her guess and curtsied before the mountainous man, as she would before a king. I am Oluwakim, king of the Armespian Oculos. Who is this insect who presents me with a drink as though she were fit to serve me? I am Sigrid, my lord, of Agenau. The king looked skeptically at her, his eye roving over her slight form like a hawk surveying the geography of a mouse's haunch. Are you human? You look human, girl. I will not be served by humans. Sigrid stared determinedly at her feet. I'm not entirely sure, sire. I see what you see when I look into the mirror. But I have a deformity. Long-eared Tomomo sends me mangled humans to pour my drink. No, I'm whole. It is only that I was born with 3 breasts instead of 2. My parents were ashamed of me. Tommy took me from the barges of Agenau. Oluwakim blinked with his one colossal eye, once, twice. That is a meager qualification. I suppose your provincial modesty would preclude you from showing me this miraculous breast, and so I must take you at your word. Yet who would dare lie in the presence of the ocular? Very well, I accept you as a decent enough monster. You may pour the ale. He settled himself at the head of the table, a gesture that was not unlike a boulder settling onto a valley floor. His companions seemed to come to life and went about their business, ignoring Sigrid completely. She poured for the king and stood silently aside, waiting for him to finish his cup. He had finished 3 before he spoke again. Come, Sigrid, sit. Obediently, she did sit, a safe space away from the blue-black monarch. We have chartered the Maidenhead for our hunt. You know what it is we hunt, do you not? No, sire. Ignorant Sigrid, your education does not befit the serving girl of a king. We hunt the griffin, the white beast of the hidden isle. And we will pick up with that, with the tale of the griffin and the king, tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions? And the awkwardness descends. I would love to say that I remember what comes next, but I do not at all. Let's hope it's good. If it's not too personal, what are your birthday plans? In Austria, it's already your birthday. I don't know. I think Heath has something planned. There's nothing we can do and nowhere we can go, so I assume we'll be staying at the house with the kid, eating cake. You know, I'm having chocolate cake, I imagine. It's in the fridge. I peeked. We usually go out on my birthday. I always really want to go out on my birthday. I had a lot of birthdays that nobody cared much about when I was younger, so it's important to me to sort of have celebrations on my birthday. But there's not much of a celebration to be made this year, so we'll have to do our best, I suppose. I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I was just texting with a friend who came to my birthday party last year, and she said, it just seems like another world. We went to karaoke last year, and we were allowed to go to karaoke, and there were tons of drunk people around, and nobody was standing 6 feet apart. Nobody even knew the phrase social distancing. We have learned some new words very fast. Very, very fast. I'll learn a lot of new words. But I don't know, God, what is that going to be like when we can be close to people again? I feel like we're all going to have this collective societal PTSD about it for a long time. It's a transmissible social anxiety. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be very strange. Anybody else? Oh, I'm sure we'll all, well, I don't know, it's so strange. Like, will we? Some people will be big huggers and some people will hug very rarely from now on, I think. Everybody will react differently. It's Griffin in this story. I have spelled it the other way in other books. Although, that Gryphon spelling actually originates with Lewis Carroll. It was not a spelling before that of Griffin. And yes, the people with one eye are based on Greek mythology. There's a whole bunch of my reading of the Odyssey and Cyclops in this, definitely. Yeah. I like I said, I don't really remember that much about these guys. I believe Arimaspian is a Greek word, but yeah, it all comes from Greek. This section. Oh, that's very sweet of you, Laura. Thank you. That's a kind offer. Yeah, I have no idea, you know. That's why I agreed to do a panel tomorrow. I was like, well, you know, it's not like I can go to a party or have a party, so why not be online and available? Otherwise, I would never agree to work on my birthday. Yeah, I don't remember much about this section at all. I do remember that this section is where the whole Sigrid isn't black thing comes from. Because people, I don't know, I guess had this idea of her as black, as not black in their minds. And then it says right there that, like, these people are literally cut out of onyx stone. They're not black like Sigrid is black. You know, Sigrid is a brown girl with kinky hair. Like, that is who she is. These people are not that. They are not human. They are black stone. And I thought that was very clear. But apparently it was not, and I still get people occasionally referring to Sigrid as a white girl. She is not. There are very few white girls in this, actually, but Sigrid's definitely not one of them. Well, let's do our outro business. If anybody has any other questions, you can just pop them up while I'm going through this spiel. You guys know how it goes at this point. But do I know how it goes? It's the real question. For legal reasons, as always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can purchase them from your local independent bookseller or my local independent bookseller, which is printbookstore.com. Please do support your independent local stores in this time rather than Amazon. Amazon will be fine. Some of these stores will not. You can follow me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon, which is very, very close to a whole new reward scheme at Kat Valenti as well on Patreon. You can catch up with the archive anytime at Kat Valenti Live on YouTube. They tend to go up about 2 to 3 hours after the stream ends. And there is a tip jar in my Instagram profile, as well as on my website at katherinemvalenti.com and my YouTube profile. These are absolutely free readings, but if you are moved to toss a coin to your witch, it is appreciated beyond what you could possibly know, and I will thank you by name on the next stream, unless you don't want me to. Just tell me you don't want me to, and I won't. Thank you all so much for watching. I totally understand getting the Sigrids mixed up, because there's a bunch of Sigrids, since they all go by the name. Everyone in the Tower of St. Sigrid goes by the name Sigrid, so it does get a bit confusing. But St. Sigrid herself is not, and never has been, a white girl. Yeah. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. My birthday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel. And we will find out about the Griffin and the Gold. Have a lovely night, guys. I'll see you later.